Hi, everybody. I'm going to do a project for you, a final presentation, wherein I talk about improv for life. Now, what does that mean? Basically, I find that oftentimes in school, we can take a lot of classes, especially electives, because they sound fun, we need them for our degree, and maybe we'll also learn some great skills along the way. And that's great, and we do. Where in these classes, I can tell just from being in class with you that we have learned so much as a collective and individuals, and it's exciting. But I can also tell you that in my personal experience and the experience of some of my peers that I've heard, we can also take classes throughout our degree and have a good time and really feel like we've learned something. But when it comes time to leave that class, move into a new semester, or when it comes time to graduate, or when it comes time to apply to jobs, it can be difficult to have a vocabulary for how to transfer those skills into the real world. It can be frustrating, right? You're like, I learned so much, and now how am I even going to use this? Or you can be in a class and be like, when am I ever going to use this? I'm here to dispel all of those questions for you. I will give you a vocal overview of all of these ideas. And then with this presentation, a resource will be sent out to you. The resource will go over, once again, the new sort of perspectives you're looking at improv with, and have it in a written format. So if you're ever writing your resume or moving forward in life and wondering how can I use these skills I've learned in a tangible way, you can reference that paper. But this presentation is just more of a vocal overview. And after the presentation, I will also have a group discussion roundtable with some other people that I know that have practiced improv, and they are going to vocalize in their own lives how improv has affected them. And these people have gone on to do all kinds of different things. Some of them are still doing improv. Some of them are going into different professional careers. And so I think that will also be helpful to hear directly from people how they've used improv in their lives. So who needs improv? As we've said, we know I'm biased. I've done improv for over 5 years, but I really do believe improv can be applied to so many different aspects of your life. So we will go over how you can use improv for performance outside of school. There's an obvious connection of like, you can just keep doing improv, but how do you do that? And then if you don't want to keep doing improv in the traditional sense, how can you take the skills you've learned to other aspects of performance or media, theatrical sects of the world? Improv for practitioners, if you don't know what applied theater is, there is an overview for that. We will talk about how you can use applied improvisation. If you're interested, I know some people are majoring in like psychology things and social work things, and so that will be a great section for you. Improv for professionals, it sounds like a wide net because it is. We're going to talk about how you can use improv in professional settings to get ahead. Again, if you never even perform again, some people in this class aren't theater majors. This class is still a great thing to have taken, and you can utilize that for your own success. And then improv for humans, we're going to reflect on improv in your everyday life and what that means for you after learning these skills. So let's start with the obvious, right? Improv for performers. So once again, one of the most obvious ways you can extend the knowledge you've learned in this class is to keep doing improv outside of this class. And that can look like a few things. So a lot of people, when they leave their first improv class or workshop, they will then go on to take improv classes, not at a university, at an improv theater. And they're usually leveled classes, and there's a lot of places to take them. There's over 500 comedy theaters in the United States. And I even, in my research, was looking like, well, what if someone, I don't know if anyone would even want to do this in this class, but what if someone moves to Alaska? Will they have a place to do improv there? I looked it up, and yes, the Urban Yeti Improv Group is a thing that exists. So that's great. It can seem a little daunting to go to a new theater and take a class with new people or try to go into that kind of space, but that's why there are these tiered systems where since you've learned improv in this format and you kind of know the Herald, you can either start with a little higher of a class or you can just start from the beginner class. They're very welcoming spaces. But because improv is so accessible, you don't even need to spend money to keep doing improv. which you probably already knew, but it's a good reminder to have in your brain. You shouldn't let your own perception of like what is good improv or what really counts as professional improv limit you from expanding your craft. Improv is one of the most accessible art forms there is out there because all you need is one other person just to practice. If you want to perform, then you need a third person to watch you. But improv is accessible in that we've been practicing long form teams that have 5 to 7 to 9 whatever people, and that is normal. But another thing that is completely normal is just doing improv with one other person. There's a lot of great improv duos out there that display this. TJ and Dave, we watched do the baseball scene, but that's still real improv, just 2 people, and you can do short form games or long form improv like that. And then there's also so many different forms to discover. So if you're interested in expanding your knowledge of improv itself, it's not all about the heralds. We didn't always do short form games in this class because it was long form based, but there are so many short form games that are similar to Whose Line Is It Anyway, where there's a format to it, like Dating Game is a popular one on Whose Line, if you can remember. Those are 3 to 5 minute aspects of improv that are fun and bite-sized and approachable and easy to learn. And you can go that route, or you can dive into long forms. There are so many other long forms other than the Herald, and sometimes people find that they love those even more. There's wave forms, mono scenes where the whole 20 to 40 minute long form takes place in one location. You can do musicals if you love being musically inclined, and there's also like rap improv groups. So your journey with learning improv and performing improv doesn't have to be over. And this is also a great option for people who are not theater majors. I know some of you were talking to me about how you're going to be going into like medical professions or like business-based professions, and you are concerned about how to maintain your creativity and love of performance in this post-graduation time. And I really would encourage you to think about improv, because it is something that, unlike an entirely scripted musical or play, you don't need to go to rehearsal for 4 hours every night and have this go from your 9 to 5 to this extremely labor intensive thing that, despite loving it, is hard to balance. Improv sort of takes some of that stress away. So I would encourage you, if you are looking for a creative outlet in an industry that outside of the industry that you're in, improv is a great one, because you get to dictate how much you practice, you get to dictate all of that, and you can still have fun with your friends and have a great creative outlet. But let's say you do have a theater degree, or you do want to go into theater or something akin to it, like writing or script writing, voice work, and you're like, well, how do I apply the skills that I've learned in improv to this? Now, there's some obvious connections, right? If anyone has taken a Stanislavski class at OSU, you might realize some of the correlations there in some repetition exercises and paraphrasing exercises. Just like those concepts in Stanislavski, improv is teaching you as an actor to let go of the idea that the scene needs to be perfect. And that's a great thing to practice as an actor. And on top of that, you know, you're displaying to casting directors and future audition people that you are not limited by scenic design or props. You are unafraid to try new things, which sounds crazy for a performer. Of course, performers like to perform, but as you guys have probably told from this class, it's a whole different can of worms. I know a lot of people were really scared to take this class, and they have really huge performing backgrounds. So it is a great thing to have on your resume. Also, something that I learned is agents are at times more likely to, like, it's easier to get an agent if you have an improv background for these same reasons, because they know that you're able to overcome a lot of the issues that other scripted actors might face. It makes self-tapes easier. I know self-taping can be another place where you just want to get that perfect take, but you'll see in the industry that we watch tapes like Stephanie Shu's audition for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And you can see some connections to improv in that tape. I think the person taping her says, "Can you sing that part?" And she just immediately, without missing a beat, sings it. There's no fear behind what she's doing. She's experimenting in the tape. And so that was either her first self-tape or a callback. The incorporation of music, which is like a big taboo in most self-taping, she's circumventing all these rules and limitations that we put on ourselves as actors, and it's very, very helpful. So remembering those kinds of things. And then writing, there's a huge relationship that's been well documented between long form improvisation formats like the Herald and American comedy in general. You can see this all throughout comedy. For example, I think I brought this up in class, but let's just take the Key and Peele sketch, Substitute Teacher. Everyone knows that. But now you have a new vocabulary and way to look at that sketch as a viewer or as a writer, because you have this new strategy for talking about comedy. You have a new word like gaming or beats that help you to dissect sketches and better understand formats like that. So you can see that the game is established when Keegan-Michael Key first says a child's name wrong in his class, and then the game keeps heightening and heightening. And as an improviser now, you have that toolkit. So when you sit down and write, not only are you circumventing, in a way, your inner saboteur, your inner editor that makes it hard to start writing, because you're practicing an improv to trust yourself, understand that your ideas are good, or at least even if you put your ideas out and they don't work, you can just edit it away later. It helps with that. But now you have a new format in your mind for how to make something work. And joke writing is a lot about format. So if you're into writing, it's not a surprise why a lot of the comedy greats in terms of writing, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and all of these very famous comedians have a background in improv, because they are applying those things directly. Directing, once again, rather obvious. Improv is training you to champion people's ideas, consider them, problem solve creatively. We've all worked with a director who has said no to you in more ways than one. And yes, sometimes as a director, you want to say no to things, but improv changes your perspective in terms of how to approach other people's ideas and see them as brilliant in different ways and work with them instead of saying no, finding a consensus together by mutual creation. Podcasting, there are so many improv podcasts. Once again, a very fun hobby or something that you could monetize potentially later on. And voice acting too, similar applications to scripted writing. But this goes to say that as you identify the specific skills you've learned in improv, listening, idea generation, bravery, literally, creative problem solving, collaborative problem solving, think about those specific skills you've learned in improv and see how they move into other aspects. Just like you can identify, I learned this in Stanislavski class and I learned this in improv, you can say, this is a skill I need for improv and this is a skill I need to be in scripted work. So, and it can help you get unconventional acting jobs. Like, for example, if you're familiar with what standardized patients are. So there is a program at hospitals across the world wherein people who are training to become doctors need to have practice doing things like breaking horrible news to family members. And there is an acting job that exists called a standardized patient, wherein you learn some background on a character, and then you go and you directly interact with doctors as they have a sort of practice run to telling people horrible news. And that is such a great thing to have on your resume, improv, when you're applying to something like that. And yeah, again, I don't know if I mentioned it, so I just want to make sure I did, but if you do want to keep doing improv and you don't want to take classes and you don't want to do it by yourself, you kind of want to do it in a somewhat structured format, you can also always look up, I might have already said this, but I just want to make sure, improv jams. Improv jams are audience participation shows are a great option for you. They're a little less low stakes for you and like much less planning, but you can also always look that up. any improv theater will at some point be having improv jams. So a lot of ways to apply this. Now, moving on from any kind of performing, there are people in this class who don't have this as their major and they don't plan on doing much performance outside of school. Totally fine. But that doesn't mean you just took this class to get your degree and you never have to use it again, right? So applied theater in general is using theater for social change, right? But a facet of applied theater is applied improvisation. So applied improvisation, here's the official definition from the Applied Improvisation Network: the use of principles, tools, practices, skills, and mindsets of improvisational theater in non-theatrical settings that may result in personal development, team building, creativity, innovation, and/or meaning. So improv as a format is used in workshops all the time. Even my improv group in college would be called in by different student organizations or different businesses to do workshops. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. But one of those reasons is in like a social work or psychology field, typically, applied improvisation is used to help people in their well-being. So it's been used for elderly populations with dementia. It's been shown that using improv workshops can help them have a fortified like zest for life, because dementia can be very harrowing to go through. Youth populations facing depression, or just young populations in schools for education, applied improvisation can be used. Those with autism, English as a second language. These applied improvisation projects, which have been well documented, by the way, so if you are interested in social work and psychology, and you're looking for a format, you're moving into a new job and you want to offer this as like a format to use, there's a lot of groundwork for you. The Applied Improvisation Network.org is a great resource, but then also people have many research papers out on like JSTOR or resources like that. But these can be used across for therapy, across many what is the word I'm looking for? I can't find it. But so therapy, education, social work, business, tech, healthcare. Improvisation is used as a format because of the skills we're talking about. You can feel it in your own experience about the transition between the initial time doing improv, which is perhaps like filled with fear or fear of embarrassment, can help people overcome that. People with social anxiety can find new and creative ways to communicate and have a fortified sense of confidence in navigating those spaces. So if you are interested in psychology or social work or therapy, this is something to keep in your back pocket. You know about these improv skills. You have a groundwork for developing applied improvisation workshops. And you don't have to let this go just because this wasn't a psych class, right? So something to keep in mind. Now, here's where I want to get into the nitty gritty of your resource that I'm going to give you. I implore you to think of this class not as a class for your degree, but as something you can use to help yourself find success. I'm not a business person. I hate like frilly words like networking and stuff, but the reality of the world is that is a lot of commercial success and having money, and a lot of people don't go into job industries that are as lovey-dovey, I'll say, as theater, and even theater is not very lovey-dovey. It's very competitive. So when you're formulating like a resume or thinking about how theater applies to your professional life, improv rather, applies to your professional life, it is an invaluable tool to you. In my own personal experience, I've done improv for over 5 years, and in every single job interview I've done, and I've applied for a lot of different kinds of jobs, they've either asked me about improv or I could easily bring up improv, and it excites the interviewer. Because not only does improv leave you with a lot of skills that people want to see in their workers and employees, but it adds a personality to your interview process that makes you immediately more human and much less of a person on a list of applicants, right? So apply for jobs in food service development, like archival development, like just all kinds of different jobs, and it's always come up. So for example, I went to LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, I have this just random jobs that I picked on LinkedIn that has nothing to do with each other. So an account supervisor, this is like a very money job. These responsibilities we're looking through. Obviously, in any job application, you do need to have certain skills that are related to the job. So maybe the accounting part is not improv related, but acting as the main point of contact for clients, managing relationships, internal teams, positive rapport, communication programs. These are all like buzzwords that you can immediately connect back to improv, right? So the yes and in your job interviews, you can connect improv rules to their job space in a way that immediately connects to their brand identity. Again, buzzwords, business. But like thinking about what yes and means. Yes and, which is our skill that we've learned, can be then used as a strategy to connect to another thing like collaborative problem solving. So it's all about like translating these words in your head, because you did learn this invaluable new skill, how to be a better collaborative problem solver. But you just had to translate that from improv speak to business speak. And now you're this new vivacious candidate, right? Because what is yes and? Yes and is agreeing and adding. After taking this class, or maybe after doing improv more, depending on how much you're cognizant of the connection between your everyday life and improv, you'll realize how much everybody says no in the world, and they do it creatively. No one just says no and shoots down ideas to be an asshole, but you'll realize as you pay attention to the world and your workspaces and your everyday life, people say no all the time. So yes and is actually training us to not just immediately shoot down the ideas of others, but to accept realities and then move forward. So that is like problem solving 101, accepting realities, trying to navigate problems instead of just wallowing in the no that you're getting, saying yes to people, celebrating other people's ideas, making your scene partner look good is all about that. Making your scene partner look good can translate into business talk to making your coworkers feel good, being a good team player, listening to other people's ideas, supporting people's initiatives in the workplace, listening, obviously, something that doesn't need to be translated. And then even like using the Herald structure is something that can be translated into like a business situation, because you're taking a structure and showing that you can be innovative within it and create something new, even if you have a pre-laid structure. And once again, this applies to business in more ways than one. And when I say business, I don't just mean like business, I mean career. So like whether you're going to be a therapist, a business person, or a social worker, or an architect, it doesn't matter. These can translate. So there we see this accountant one. In this editor position, this journalism position, once again, it's always collaboration and communication skills. You're immediately showing people you can be part of an ensemble, you can be a team player, and also that other people's successes do not intimidate you. In every other area of the world, there's so much competition, and that can be good, but it's also good when you're on a team to be able to acknowledge the successes of others. Editing and innovating, right? Like these are skills that you also do. As you watch a scene, you watch the peaks, you pay attention to trends, you know when to end it, when to cut it off. It sounds kind of silly to make these allusions, but these are things that when you use them in job interviews, people's eyes light up. Innovation, you're unafraid to throw things at the wall to give new ideas. You're a bold, impassioned employee. This is kind of crazy. And then so this one, recovery coach, again, talking about support, listening, paying attention, not being on your own narrative, because that's a huge thing in like recovery, right? You want to get a patient from like point A to point B, but there's so much more nuance to people's experiences. So it can seem silly to like break down these job interviews because it seems a little obvious in your brain now as I'm vocalizing it. But I mean, I don't know about you, when you're applying to jobs, it can become so overwhelming to look at all of these different job descriptions and apply to so many different jobs and think like, how am I ever going to get a job when I'm just one out of a X amount of applicants? And I'll tell you from personal experience, like not only have I experienced not only have I experienced this in job applications, but also I know someone from my own improv group that got into law school, got into grad school because her essay was all about improv. It's an immediately humanizing endeavor. And if there's one person up for a job who has the same qualifications as you two are at the top of the heap, improv and talking about it can push you over, because not only are you displaying these extra interpersonal skills that you have, you're humanizing yourself, and people would rather hire someone that they want to share a cubicle with or that they want to be on a team with. If there's two applicants with the same qualifications, that person with a good personality and a good problem solving base will be picked over the other. So again, all of this will be in the resource, how you can directly translate these things for your resume and for job interviews. But it's something interesting to think about, where it doesn't matter if you're not a theater major, these things can be applied to all different kinds of fields. It's exciting. So Improv for Humans kind of goes back to, these are also interconnected. We can see how improv helps with personality development, social anxiety, communication, fear of embarrassment, team building, optimism, having fun. And these are not just things you apply to jobs. They're not just things you apply to therapy. They're things that affect your life in a tangible way. And these are, by the way, like case study backed. Like there have been populations of studies where people will take surveys and written assignments before they do improv for X amount of time, and report back that there is a marked difference in these psychological and perspective-based areas of life. It's no joke. Many, sample size is huge, okay? And then this is just genuinely interesting. Your brain reacts differently when you do improv a lot. So there is a TED Talk and some scientific research about creativity in the brain, and they were taking MRIs of people who were doing scripted work, whether it was like rapping or just scripted vocalizations, and then written music arrangements. And they scanned people's brains when they were doing those pre-scripted things, and then they scanned people's brains when they asked them to they'd give them a few words, suggestions, and then they would freestyle rap or freestyle vocalize things. And then they would do the same thing with music professionals. And the brain's Broca's area lights up when you are improvising. And that is just, once again, a physical testament to the fact that improv helps you to have expressive communication. And expressive communication is a different form of communication that we use a lot of the time, because we are on autopilot a lot of the time in our lives. There are a lot of social interactions that are scripted for us, whether we are cognizant of it or not. How we walk through life, how we say, how are you? Good. How are you? That's it. Good. That's a micro example, but as you practice improv, you are training your brain to be paying attention, be listening, being more open to things, and saying yes to things, and changing your script, realizing that the script of your life does not have to be a mono destiny. So it's exciting. And at this point, as I'm winding down, I'm kind of throwing a lot of information at you that, once again, will be surmised later on. But I just want you to acknowledge your own journey. So like these people in these case studies, think of your own experience in this class as a case study. What were your perceptions about improv before you took this class? How afraid were you? Did you think when you went out that your experience was going to be one of embarrassment? Think about when you first started doing those 3-line scenes, how you felt like you had to say something funny or say something right. And then you see genuinely the switch in your brain over time that we just talked about to now, are you afraid or are you not afraid? Do you see how your own confidence has grown and how you care less about being right? These are things that can easily just fall to the wayside as you get better at something. You forget how much progress you've made. So I would love for everyone to just reflect on the skills you've learned and realize that you have changed so much from the beginning of the semester. As someone who's done this for a long time, you guys have done great. I'm so proud of you. And I will always be a resource for you if you need to, beyond the resource that I'm providing you, talk about how to use improv in your life, where to find improv resources, or how to practice more improv. We'll always be there for you. But I just wanted to say, great job in your class. And I hope that you see from this presentation and your time in the class and the resource I provided that improv can help you throughout multiple aspects of your life. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the roundtable about improv after classroom, how you guys have used improv in your everyday lives. This is a collection of my improv friends and confidants. And I would love if you guys want to introduce yourself. We can start with like Haley and then go alphabetical.
Hi, I'm Haley Clark.
What do you do, Haley?
I am a youth program coordinator and marketing assistant at the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation.
Per.
Thank you.
I'm Ollie. I'm a first year graduate teaching associate at OSU. I'm getting my master's.
What are you getting your master's in?
Getting my master's in women's gender and sexuality studies.
Okay, I heard.
And I'm Audrey, and I'm also in the master's program, but for speech language pathology.
I'm Nitisha, and I'm a sales associate at Paramount, and I work with TV and ads.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm McKenzie, and I'm a New York fan coordinator, which just means that I check in audiences for live TV tapings.
And I'm Troy. I'm a graduating senior here at Ohio State University with a history major.
Love it. Okay, so all of you guys have done improv. We were all in the same improv group together, Fishbowl. But most of you have like left school. Me and Troy are still graduating, but most of you have left school and gone on to do other things. And I was just curious if anyone could speak on improv. Has it helped you in your career paths, regardless of it? Obviously, no one here is like on Second City main stage right now, but has improv helped you with your career in other tangential ways?
I can go first if that's okay. I totally think that improv, the way I just interact with people, I would have to say, because in like sales, it's all about like communicating and like writing in emails and like talking to people in person, and it's a lot of like in-person interactions and whatnot. And so that improv has helped me like talk to people in a way that's like to communicate easier / like in a they're in like a way that it's like good.
For sure. Do you think it's like, I feel like with improv and communication, it's like it feels obvious and then it gets hard to talk about, and then you like remember it's just like such the basics of like making your scene partner look good and like listening skills. It's like so the basics, but you just realize when you do improv how much people do not like listen to each other or how much people say no in the world. But I feel that.
To keep it in the box, I also have used improv in my career in a way, because when I was doing grad school interviews,
I was curious
about asked me just about like influential things in my college experience. I always brought up improv because people over 40 think that it's so cool because it's just like a brave and like fun, weird thing to do. And I feel like it always kind of like is a good jumping off point to talk about just, I don't know, like all of the skills that you're kind of just talking about, like being able to think on your feet and also being able to reframe things like from a no into a yes. I think like in improv, there's kind of a way to do a no if you want to in a scene, while also kind of like still moving forward. And I feel like that's also important in speech therapy. If a child is giving you no's, like maybe you can kind of reframe that, come up with something new.
Yeah,
And
Audrey, so you work directly with kids on speech therapy?
Mhm.
Do you ever so there's such a thing as applied improvisation. Have you heard of that?
no, I have not.
Audrey, it's basically applied theater is when you use theater for social change, and you can use applied improv for like populations of young people or older people with dementia. But I know our friend Alyssa too does speech pathology, and it just does make me think, like, wonder how improv might come into like just the exercises that you do and like supporting children or people in populations that are like in learning environments. That's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that it really applies in that field, and also just like I mean, I'm sure we're gonna get into it, but like any field, like you can really kind of apply that same like value of kind of like fixing a situation and being able to be creative with it to anything. So I think it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, Hali, you and I were talking about earlier, like job interviews. And like in my experience, I've like applied to all different kinds of jobs, like archival development jobs and then like serving jobs. And it's just like in every single job interview I have, improv comes up in it. And I feel like that's similar to like the grad school application experience, or like, I don't know, how are your guys' experiences with like job interviews and like improv in them?
I can say I've interviewed at so many places. Every single time improv comes up, and because I have it on my resume, and people literally eat it up because their immediate reaction is like, you tell this to anybody who does improv, like their immediate reaction is like, oh, I could never do that. And it already creates like this great conversation of like they're so curious to learn about you as this like cool person who can go up on stage or be comfortable in front of a crowd, and just that period, because that's like a huge fear that a lot of people have. But being comfortable public speaking, and um it also goes into like not being scared of being like wrong or laughed at, or like that extra air of confidence that comes with finding out that, so like if you don't do improv, finding out somebody does improv, you're like, oh, that's really cool. So that is great, I think, part of having it on your resume, because then people are just obsessed with it. I think it's so cool, and it opens so many doors in conversations, especially in interviews.
Has anyone else felt that experience?
Yeah, actually, I just did an interview last week to be a facilitator of sort of like these like teaching demos for people coming into OSU when they start teaching. It sort of just helps them out during orientation week. And I brought up that I did improv, and I sometimes utilize improv in the classroom, not to bring it back into the classroom because I know we're
Bring
trying
it,
to go
the
out the
classroom.
classroom, but my job is in the classroom as an instructor. But I just brought that up, and he was just like, I'm in the theater department, and I love that. And I think we need more of that, because there is like a confidence that you start to develop there.
I
Because you're
think,
like, there are no rules.
yeah, and I think in learning environments too, like I think so much of society is competition based, and improv is like a very collectivist environment where you realize that there's not really necessarily any need for competition, which is like at first like kind of disorienting, but you get to be like, oh, like McKenzie is so funny in ways that I will never be funny, and I am funny in ways that McKenzie is never like, going to be funny, because we're so different. But in that way we bolster each other up in a scene, because like I no longer have to be threatened by her talent, I can celebrate it, and like vice versa, which is just like, it is really disorienting and like really nice to experience in the everyday world. And in terms of job interviews, I think that it's really apparent in the way that you carry yourself and like the way that you talk about improv, because it like it seems very obvious, but you're like such a team player that like if person A has the same qualifications as person B and you're picking between them, a lot of times in like any industry, they're going to pick a person who has a better personality and the person who like you'd rather spend every day like talking to and sending emails to, because they're going to be like a good team player. And improv is just like a testament to how you can like act in those spaces and like be excited about other people's ideas and collaborate with them. Wow. kind of iconic. But Nitisha, you were telling me about just another like what was, I don't know his name, but this guy's job that was just like reminded you of improv, and I thought that was cool too. I would love for you to bring that up.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I am in this like mentorship program, and one of my mentors, he works in development at Noggin, and he like works.
I love Noggin. Sorry, does everyone know what Noggin is? It's a children's program, but like network.
It's like Noggin TV. It's like a kids TV, and it's through like Nickelodeon kind of on that kind of channel wave. And his whole job is he receives like instructions to make he receives instructions as ideas. I guess he's like he wants something to be, his boss will tell him that he wants something that's like a game that is interactive, like it has a cultural component, and I don't know, has to do with like cooking or something like that. And so then he'll like make like it that's all he gets, and then his whole job is to like make a whole game based off of those three like suggestions, I guess. And it's like the creativity is entirely up to him. Like he is allowed to make like whatever he wants. Well, him and his team, of course, but it's like that's kind of like the improv part of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I was thinking about how like that is just such a real world example of like jobs. In your job, you have certain formats you have to like conform to, but oftentimes like the reason you're hired is to like develop new ideas within a format. So it's like just like you use a herald and like you go through each beat, but you're creating something completely new within like a format that's already established. And so like he sort of got a one-word suggestion in a way, and then he sort of made a herald out of it. So that's kind of iconic. Troy, and McKenzie, I know, so McKenzie's currently in an improv group in New York City called Help Me, I'm Drowning. Right? I said it right. Okay, good. I'm so nervous. Help Me, I'm Drowning. And Troy has done voice acting as well. And so I was wondering if you guys wanted to speak on like, and Nitisha's about to take some improv classes in Brooklyn. So after you leave like one improv group, like what is and especially like one in college, how was your guys' experience going to new improv groups? And then Troy, like what was your experience like did you use improv at all in your other like performances, or like other performance types? I guess I'm like losing a word. I'm trying to find a better word for type, but yeah, you thespians out there, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I can go first out of that gaggle. I even before I got into official in the improv group, I was part of a voiceover like professional training thing that I did for my step project, and such. And so I was put up with a professional voiceover coach, and we did like one-on-one sessions. And she was super nice. And our first conversation, just like meeting each other, one of the first questions she asked me was, "Have you ever done improv before?" And I was like, "No," and stuff. I'm like, "Not at all. I haven't even considered it." And then lo and behold, like 2 months later, I joined this group, and I remember being like so excited to like tell her like during our next session, I'm like, "Guess what? You asked me if I had improv experience in the beginning. Well, now I'm in an improv group." And I didn't necessarily like know how much that would come into play. And oh my God, it like just to not only like have that experience with like the acting side of it, to be able to improv during an acting scene, and just have that freedom to, how would this character act beyond like the words on the page, and stuff, and just knowing how much actors make characters their own, without the screenwriter really even like intending, how a certain line is said, to just have that experience of like, oh, I know how to like improv in an acting scene. But just in like the voice sense of, making a character and trying to make them unique, so that every scene I'm not going out there and just sounding like this, how I normally do, to try and I found if I lead with a voice, the character will almost follow. If that makes sense. Of like, if I could do an example of like, I have like an old man voice that I'll do, and I'll find that like anytime I do it, like I get more like hunched and like crunched up on myself, and I can't like it's not the same if I just do it, sitting still. And so I found that one of the funnest things to do and how to find a voice is to either lead with physicality and then the voice will follow, or lead with a voice and the physicality will follow. And also just discovering new voices and learning. It's like, oh shoot, like I can do that. I can use this in voice acting, of when like someone initiates a scene with like an accent or a voice, and it's like, okay, can I match that? Can I try and like match that to be like, yeah, we're in the same place, we're from the same area. And because when I'm in a booth, it's like, trying to think like, okay, like what do I know how to do? Like, I think I know how to do like, Australian maybe, sure. But like on the spot in the scene is like, oh shoot, like Gregory came out with like this like Scottish ogre thing. And it's like, okay, like I've never thought in a million years to do this on my own, but like, can I match this now? And like on the spot sort of like craft it without the ability to do multiple takes in a booth is just like, okay, on the spot, let's give it a shot. And that has let me find so many voices and characters that I can then bring to the voiceover booth. And it's been fun.
That's awesome. And I didn't even know that she asked you originally if you'd done improv before. And I think that's kind of a testament to, like, in the presentation that I created for this previously, sort of talking about how, a lot of theater majors are taking this class, and they understand that they're like learning a skill, but I think they don't understand at times like how interdependent like these theater formats are, and how training in improv is so interwoven with scripted work and actually can help you a lot with scripted work, especially this concept of like getting it right in the booth. And like people get a lot of anxiety about like getting a scene right. And it's almost Stanislavskian, Troy, what you're describing, sort of embodying the character physically and vocally. But that's so cool. I've never done voice work, but I would love to do that. That's so cool. But McKenzie and Nitisha, New York girls.
Yeah, no, I myself was a OSU theater major. I did like know I wanted to pursue comedy while I was doing that, and that's why Fishbowl was kind of my focus while I was there. And then since moving to New York, I just took classes at Brooklyn Comedy Collective, which is I think where Nitisha is also about to take classes. And that's kind of just like the way that I feel like most comedy people did it, is like they just moved to either Chicago or LA or New York and started taking classes. They met people that, laughter comes easily with, and start making stuff from there. And that's sort of been my experience, just like meeting the people that I vibe with. And Carly, like something that you said earlier, about like theater majors not always realizing how important and how helpful improv can be. And I think that it really is like, once you realize that improv is like, it doesn't have to necessarily be funny. It can be like just as dramatic. It can be just as real as like any piece of scripted theater. And it is an amazing way to learn to understand how audiences react to things. So it's like, if you're a writer and you want to learn like how to capture an audience's attention, like go do improv and like follow every crazy instinct you have. And you learn what works on stage. You learn, if you're a comedian, you learn like, okay, if I like timing to like subvert expectations to like get the biggest laughs. And so yeah, it's definitely super helpful for anyone who like wants to perform or write or anything like that, because you really get an understanding of like how to engage an audience.
Yeah. And you're in an improv group with your friends Robin and Ethan, and I just want to bring this up to illuminate to other people, like it can be intimidating to like have this idea of like starting a group and like how you might do that, but like you met them in your classes. And then one of the best things about improv for me in my mind, which is why I loved like that our group did free shows throughout college, is like improv is such an accessible art form where you really only need one other person to like play off of and be your scene partner, and you can do it at any time. And I think starting a group is something that people think of as harder than it might be. But you guys just like, how long did you know each other before you before you made a group?
We were all in the same improv class together, and I think the class was like 7 weeks long. And so like the last week, it was kind of like class is going to end, and if you're going to keep regularly doing improv, you kind of need to pick the people that you want to do it with. I already knew my friend Robin through working together at the Late Show, so I saw him pretty regularly, so it was already like we're already friendly, like, and we had a good vibe in class, and then we also had a good vibe with Ethan, so you're like, Ethan, get in here. And I'm going strong for over a year now.
That's
Nice.
so cool. Nitisha, how's your experience? Like, how is it? Did you sort of just pick Brooklyn Comedy Collective because you knew about it through other people, or like how was it to find a theater to do classes at? Because I think another thing people might be intimidated by is like how to pick or what the right answer is. And so like, what was your experience like with that?
Okay, so I moved here. I truly didn't really have improv classes in mind, to be completely honest.
That's
But
okay.
once but when I got here, Kenzie was just like, you live so close to the Brooklyn Comedy Collective, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. And then I started going to Kenzie's shows and her group shows, and like they have improv jams there. I'm going to one today.
What's an improv jam?
Oh my gosh, great question. An improv jam is literally anybody and everybody who knows about it can go, and it's like it's kind of like a student. Wait, Kenzie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mostly like a student based through the Brooklyn Comedy Collective, at least BCC for short. Like is sorry. But
I mean, all theaters usually have their own version of jams. It's actually a great way to kind of like figure out which theater is your vibe. Like you can see like what kind of people, like, it's a jam at like the Pit is gonna have a completely different energy than a jam at BCC, so it's a really great like easy way to like
Yeah.
test out the waters a bunch of different places, but it's just like a low stakes practice, like one-off environment to test out improv.
Yeah. And I think like it's obvious in big cities that there's improv theaters in like Chicago and New York, but I was like looking online and just like you can really do improv anywhere. I like was just curious and I like looked up like Alaska Improv and like it exists. Like it's crazy out here.
Nice.
So yeah, it's cool. And I think you guys both have full-time jobs. So it's like improv is also something you can still do. Like obviously some people are like pursuing comedy, but like even like Nitisha, I don't know if you said you're like, I didn't even know if I wanted to pursue improv anymore, like in that format after college. And so it's like you have this full-time job, you're making a huge name for yourself in New York City, and you sort of still have time to like have this creative outlet and like really expose your ideas to the world. So I think it's cool. You can do improv as opposed to like being in like in a musical, you have to like leave work and then go to rehearsal for 5 hours. Like it's like hard to uphold. So improv is like very, once again, accessible. Now, like final question vibes. I was just curious how you guys like think. We talked about like career and we talked about like how you apply this in like ways that are like for your success, but has improv just like affected your perspective or like your personality in any way, or like just like how you view the world? Like I know that I always liked performing, but I really think that performing in improv for me personally has like helped me to be like more vulnerable and has helped me to like really be more positive, also like a better friend, and just like the way that I walk through the world with like listening to people and like caring about their ideas and thinking people are like brilliant and just in ways like that. But I was just wondering if you wanted to like reflect on how improv has like changed you as a person, if you think about like the kind of person you were or like the way that you looked at your world before you tried improv and then like to now.
I have to jump in on this because I can't remember who I had a conversation with, but I was like, improv changed my brain chemistry. Where like you like join fishbowl and then I guess we're not talking about this because we're all in fishbowl together, but you start doing improv and you learn like how improv works, and you start having fun doing it because you're like, oh, now I'm like enjoying it, and like I like these people and like we're getting laughs. And then outside of improv you start to notice things differently. And I mean, I think for me, it was immediately like, oh, there's like so many little bits of humor everywhere.
Mm.
And it's just a matter of like being more present in the moment. Like when you're in a scene, you don't want to like be overthinking about, what just happened or what's going to happen, because the best improv happens when you're staying present with your scene partner. And I think that is one huge thing I started doing improv. And now that I'm like, not actively doing improv right now, I still hold on to that. And like my job is like, it can be a really sad job. I work with amazing people, but it can like it's dark subject matter. And being present and being fully there with every person that I meet, or like when I work on teams a lot, like I work in a bunch of different groups, working on different campaigns with people. Each group and each job and each thing that I'm doing, I'm like staying present with the people that are in front of me. And in those little pockets, I'm like, there's still things to find humor in and still things to like carry on about like the way I connect with these people because I'm here with them. And I think I got that definitely from being like in fishbowl with y'all and being on stage. And yeah, it's just that was one thing I was like, oh my God, I learned so much from improv because it affects me still. So yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to piggyback on that, if I may.
You
Because I think about how improv kind of allows for relationships, or like at least challenges us to think about relationships differently. Like the one rule that we have to care about is yes and. And what that tells me is we're trying to foster like this community of people who are willing to listen and be present, like Hali was saying, and then to affirm what that person wants to make into their world or reality, even if it's like fictional or for like 15 minutes or for one scene or whatever. I think it just challenges us to, I don't know, think about collaboration, think about world making. I mean, this is me as like an activist, and I'm constantly thinking about how to think about relationships in more equitable ways. And improv is so like an equalizer. Yeah.
That's a really good. Wait, can I go next, please?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Wait, because also I was gonna say, going off of both you guys, like it has kind of like you kind of like tap into like your truest version of yourself, if you know what I'm saying. Like when you're on stage, like you're like like you like Kenzie also said this earlier, where you like follow your craziest instinct, and it's like you just like it's like you kind of like, if you're doing like characters or like voices, like Troy said, like you can like kind of separate who you are versus like who like this character is, and it kind of like reaffirms who you are in a sense, because it's like, okay, like Tisha wouldn't do that, but like I'm not Tisha right now. Like, like it's like silly. It's like it's like I have more fun in my life also, because like with like the people that I'm around, like if you're allowed to, or you're like allowed to do anything, but like when you're like having a conversation, like you can have like a 30-second like we're just being silly right now, and then like I don't know, it's just I have more fun in my life because of improv for sure, and the people that I've met because of it.
Yeah.
For me personally, I know Carly, you mentioned like the applied theater aspect earlier. I also had to take a unit on that when I was a student, and there is something that can be so cathartic about like, if anything that I'm like that's on my mind a lot. I'm really lucky because I get to do improv like 4 times a week with like everything. So I'm always just like taking whatever's on my mind, whatever I'm like dealing with, and like putting it into a scene, and then getting to like kind of act through maybe like the most extreme version, and then like maybe I like learn from that, and then so I'm doing that a lot, and that I feel like improv has sort of become my therapy at this point.
Troy, I saw you. Oh, Audrey also.
Sorry, go ahead.
God, yeah. Piggybacking off of all of that, just to have the confidence given by like being able to perform improv, to feel like you have a skill that requires like I can do this at any time. I can all like you said, Carly, all I need is one person and a word, and we can just make something happen. Especially coming from someone who beforehand I was so always like paranoid and like meticulous about like memorizing like PowerPoints or like stuff for like music and stuff in the performance of like I have to drill this like memorization. And not that you don't practice improv, because you do it because it's a skill that you hone, but that there is no necessarily like if I say something, like the audience isn't going to sit there and be like, that's the wrong line and stuff. Is that like anything I say or anything my partner says continues it and such. And it's, you know, we're heading in the right direction. It's such an incredible feeling to have that confidence given by improv. And beyond that, kind of, you know, what Ali said of like, you know, it's yes and like that's the main thing. That's what it boils down to, is to, like, just expanding that beyond the stage of, I have never been in a more supportive group than like an improv group, truly, because people take that beyond the stage. And listening, like, you don't just listen to your scene partner on the stage, it's that starts to become how you just act in life, of like, you know, you're not just, you know, beforehand I was probably like one of those people where it's like, you know, people are the John Mulaney bit of like talking, now it's my turn, and stuff, is now like actually like listening to people, and like, because that's what we train on the stage, and then it's like, oh my god, now I'm like acting like this. Is like, you become a better conversationalist. It's something as simple as that. Or just supporting people for whatever they do, because that's what you do on stage. Is like, I think I have had I don't think I've ever really had an argument with somebody in Fishbowl, because like it's just not something that happens.
Well, I think,
stuff.
yeah, I think even if you have different opinions, it goes back to like improv teaching you how to, like, it doesn't raise to the level of a conflict, because you're listening and caring and envisioning the other person's perspective and taking care of that. And so it just helps you to solve problems more benignly and yeah, equitably. I think that
precisely. Yeah.
Precisely.
Bingo.
Audrina.
And then as one final little piggyback, I really liked what Troy just said too about like that listening time in a scene. I do think improv teaches you that, like, knowing when to insert yourself and when not to is really helpful. It's helpful in Zoom calls. It's also harder on Zoom calls, but just I think in all kinds of life, like, it's really important to know sort of when's a good time to step back and listen, and when's a good time to step forward and step into the limelight. And I also think that when you're in such a wonderful group like Fishbowl, you really get to appreciate people on so many different levels, and sort of realize that, like, not only because you kind of know your community is loving and friendly, but to see like the talent and to be at auditions, I think it's just really exciting to know that everyone is so creative too. So it's just really fun.
Yeah, if we were making sort of a 2011 style word graphic, you know, those graphics that would be like in the shape of an apple, but they were full of words that were making the shape of the apple. I'm hearing words like present, being present. I'm hearing words like listening. I'm hearing words like celebration and community. And I think I'm just being silly, but like, I really do think that those are things that sound like such cookie cutter answers of like, what are good traits? And but it really is like a crash course and a practice of doing those things, and doing improv practice is almost like a meditation on those skills, because like we're always trying to be good, but walking into a space where the whole rules of the game are to be kind and be good and be supportive and listen, it is like a meditation of doing that. You're practicing it and making a ritual of like doing those things. And I think it does change kind of the way your brain sees things after a certain point. So yeah, thank you guys. All together, hearing your words, I hope will bolster the people that are taking this class and sort of help them to see all the different ways you're using this, like voice acting. I'm seeing like grad school, I'm seeing like just all these practical applications. And so, you know, a lot of times in school, we take things to get the degree, but sometimes things can like really help us actually, and that can feel really nice because we also paid to go to the class. So having a real life application is awesome. But thank you guys for coming, zooming in from New York and Columbus. But I love you guys.
Me too.
Thank you. Ciao.